Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, Alex Pereira has been dethroned by Magomed Ankalaev. Justin Gaethje goes up 2-0 on Rafael Fiziev, and Dana White, along with Sheikh Turki, are in business. They're linking up in the boxing world. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. And look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's here in Las Vegas, Sin City. Danny Segura is back in the house, checking in all the way from Miami. And Mike Bond rounds out the squad. The MMA media titan is still in Las Vegas. He's yet to head home in Toronto. He covered the event for us, as did Cold Coffee, who's on the ones and twos. I'm ready to get started. However, let me tell you, we're going to try it again, folks. A Q&A at the end of the show. So if you have some specific questions that you would like us to address, please put them out there and we'll address them towards the end of the show. All right, let's get started here with Magomed Ankalaev. We got to talk about this guy. He's a new UFC light heavyweight champion. He's now 21-1 and has not lost in his past 13 contests. Congrats to the champ. His run is impressive. Let's get a reaction from the panel to start things off. Mike Bond, you were there.
Yeah, I thought this was the right decision. I thought he won rounds 2, 3, and 4 from where I was sitting cage side watching this fight. The third round, in my opinion, the swing round that really decided this. I think you give Pereira rounds 5, and if you want an argument that he won 3 and should have got the decision here, I think that's fair. But I also think Ankalaev has a good case as well. So very close fight, but I think you can make criticism of both guys and kind of the approach they have. I mean, Alex Pereira landed 11 significant head strikes in 25 minutes. That's just not enough, in my opinion. Like, of course, the leg kicks were a big part of his game plan. I think he landed 48 of those over the course of the fight, but I just don't think that's enough. I'm not trying to go like full Cecil Peoples from the old school and say leg kicks can't finish or win fights or whatever, but like when you don't really add anything else in there on top of it, it's hard, I think, to win a fight like that. So Ankalaev just had a little bit better pressure, landed some of the better shots, had the best moment of the fight at the end of round 2 there. And I can't be too mad at this decision. I think rounds 2 and 4, there's a pretty good case for him. 2-2-4, rather.
Mike, what was that like as the fight was unfolding? You know, Gaethje and Fiziev threw down, and then you got a great walkout from Poatan. So there's got to be like 20 to 30 minutes right before the fight where everyone's just up. Again, the previous fight, the walkout, this is a title fight, this is the main event, and then this thing just unfolded so slow. It was painful at home. How was it there?
I don't think it was as bad because I think with Alex Pereira, he has kind of established himself as obviously such an exciting and unpredictable fighter in terms of when he can end a fight. He's so dangerous at striking that he can knock anyone out. So I think there was that element, even as it was playing out kind of slow, of thinking maybe this guy can catch Ankalaev at any point and knock him out. And, you know, that'll be the next win for him. But it just never happened, man. And it can be tough when you're fighting as often as he is. You know, I'm not going to try to like make any excuses. This is the longest layoff he had between fights in the UFC, I think by like 1 or 2 days after the Khalil Roundtree fight. So you can't really sit here and say like this was unideal circumstances for Pereira or whatever. If anything, it was unideal circumstances for Magomed Ankalaev fighting during Ramadan. So I don't know, man. It just seemed like he was a little hesitant with the takedown presence, like even just the idea of that being in the back of his mind, even though he stopped all of them. And it just wasn't his night to kind of get off and get that big shot. Ankalaev just seemed like he had a little more will in there. But I think there was that like energy in the arena even until the final bell that maybe Alex Pereira will do something spectacular and win this.
Yeah, he certainly has in round 5. He's rallied before. All right, Danny Segura, let's get to your reaction, man. What were your thoughts? You saw it like I did through the TV. Again, I thought it was flat. Maybe I'm going overboard. What did you think of the whole fight?
No, it was objectively flat. It wasn't a good fight at all. More or less, we kind of expected an approach or a similar approach for Ankalaev. I mean, he is fighting one of the biggest power punchers, so you expect him to be a little cautious, right? In order and for him to use his grappling as well, which I think he actually underutilized a little bit. I was surprised he decided to strike that much with Pereira. But on the side of Pereira, it was a big disappointment because it really didn't feel like he went for it. Yes, he was landing low kicks, and he had a couple moments here and there. For the most part, he was just mainly just running from Ankalaev and just kind of looking to outpoint him, but in a way not really throwing much. It was just a really weird performance. I wonder if he was injured, if he was sick. We knew a couple fighters withdrew because of illness the day of the card. Maybe it's the age. Like we see this guy as sort of like an ageless wonder, like he's just gonna always be knocking out people, but he is 37 years of age. Like maybe it is getting to him. Maybe the travel, who knows what happened, but it was a very odd performance by Alex Pereira. Easily his worst title fight performance we've seen in his career. Maybe his debut and other fights were a little more shakier, but yeah, just all around a weird performance by Pereira. And I scored the fight for Pereira, believe it or not. I also think, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit, but there's been a weird discussion around like this fight not being close. Like the fact that I scored it for Pereira, even though I think it's totally fine if Ankalaev won, people are going crazy for it. And I think there seems to be like a split in the MMA community as far as like whether this fight was close or not. I thought it was close, and I think you could score it for Pereira, but I think at the end, the right man won. Like if we judge this by pride rules and the fight in an entirety, I do think Ankalaev had the better performance.
Did you go 135 Pereira?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Goes, how about you, man? You've had some time to react since the watch along. Again, I maybe I'm being harsh, man, but I expect a lot from this guy. Let's not forget about the 3 fights in 6 months. He had 5 fights in 16 months. A lot of travel, this guy. A lot of travel, a little personal drama. It just looked like a guy that's worn down. I'm not sure about the age, but maybe just, like I say, being everywhere, and not being hunkered down for a proper camp.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we had those answers, right? It's not the fight that we all expected, because there was so much writing on it, and because of Alex Pereira's footprint in the sport, it did keep my interest the whole fight. But when you see the way it played out, I mean, a lot of people had trouble ordering this pay-per-view, right? So George and I, we were eyes and ears for a lot of people trying on the watch along, explaining what was going on. And I think a lot of people probably tuned in and thought we were trolling them, because we're literally giving them the information that Pereira's stuffing takedowns, yet he is not winning this fight. It was very, very odd the way it played out. And I think what made it even stranger was kind of like the fire that Pereira had after the fight and how it affected him. He seemed really angry, really pissed off, really frustrated. Going into the fight, walking out, nothing looked any different. He had his normal walkout. It's just the 25 minutes in between where he was another person. He was very, very flat, lackluster, just didn't really do the things that we know him to do. And sometimes I think when it comes to fighters, especially dominant fighters, I don't know that they realize, as great as the fighter is on the other side of them, there is a little part of them that goes, holy crap, that's Alex Pereira. He's knocked people out really bad before. He didn't use any of that to his advantage. And I just felt like that fight was one of those fights. Danny, you were talking about how you scored it for Pereira, George and I, and Mike, we did Ankalaev, but I looked around at a lot of people and they did look at that fight kind of differently. It's one of those where I'm sure a lot of us are looking at it. We're doing our work that night. You have to go back and you have to watch it and just watch it as a fan. It's completely different. I did that last night, but this is definitely not the fight that we expected, man. It kind of took the wind out of our sails.
Were you 3-2 Pereira, or sorry, Ankalaev, or 4-1?
The night of, I was leaning more towards 4-1. 4-1
Yeah.
felt right. Yeah. Watching it again, though, it's kind of weird. You can make those arguments. It was maybe a little bit closer than I thought it was.
I think the one thing that did get me hyped that night towards the end was there was a thought that it could be 2-2 from some scores that were flashing. And I thought, okay, well, maybe whoever wins this round wins the fight. And it was such a flat round that I was like, come on, guys, doesn't somebody want this? Doesn't somebody want to change their life or what? Danny, I don't know, this happens a lot, man. Someone thinks you're tripping and shows Jubilee's gas station, says anyone who thinks Pereira won that fight needs to reread the scoring criteria if you've ever read them, then rewatch the fight without sound. So I know there's a few of those. You want to explain maybe why you scored it for Alex Pereira?
A couple things. I don't get the whole idea of like I think rewatching the fight in order to like analyze it and bring insight and stuff like that is important, but like it's also a bit irrelevant because the judges don't get to rewatch it. The judges don't get to watch it without sound. They're there witnessing live. So whatever you saw live, that's what you're basing the fight on. That's what you're judging. So, anyways, I don't think Ankalaev, apart from what was it, round 2 where he kind of rocked Pereira, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end, apart from that round, he didn't really do much. And then when he closed the distance, he failed on a ton of takedowns. I don't even think he took Pereira down even once. The best he got was pull him up against the fence. And even then, he didn't really land any like big knees or elbows or anything like that. And on the feet, yeah, he connected some decent shots, but so did Pereira. Pereira had tons of leg kicks on him, probably doubled them. I don't know what the stats are. And although that leg was a little, beat up, his base was still fine. So I guess, it's hard to put a lot of stock into that since it didn't cost technically a lot of damage, but still, I just thought it was a close fight. And I think if you judge on like damage on who connected more, I think Pereira in 3 of those rounds did that. Now, again, it's a very close fight. I don't have a problem with Ankalaev leaving as the winner. And I think if you tell me, 48-47 the other way, that's fine. Even a 49-46, as we saw on one scorecard, I think that's fine. Like, you can see the fight and you can make an argument for that and back it up with what happened in the fight. It was a very, very close fight, in my opinion, because there was so little that was done and not much was definitive. We only have one definitive punch, which was on the second round. So I have a hard time seeing how people are just saying that Alex Pereira got destroyed, got washed, that it was a dominant performance from Ankalaev. I've seen those comments, and I think it has to do with some hate for Pereira. Some people love to see some people kind of be down and all that. So I'm not really sure what's going on, but go look at the fight. It was a close fight. Again, I don't have a problem with Ankalaev winning. In totality, I do think he had the better performance of the night. But to say that this was a washout and that it's clear for Ankalaev, I completely disagree.
You know what,
All right.
Danny? I think what happens is when you look at a guy like Pereira and how dominant he's been, you look at other sports, and when LeBron James has a poor night, for some reason we just snowball, we get all over him. And I think it's because he's been so dominant that when he's not, it's like 10 times worse. I think that's why people are looking at it that way.
Yeah, I think so too, right? Like, Ankalaev was supposed to go in there and get knocked out, right? And he didn't. And he actually had the best shot of the night. So there's definitely part of that. And I think we've seen that before when like really dominant champions, say like a Demetrius Johnson or a John Jones, has a close fight. It looks a lot worse than it should because people just expect them to like go in there and completely destroy. But I'll watch it again. I haven't seen it on a second time, but I thought it was a close fight.
If you have any comments or questions, the best ones to get on the show. Here's a couple key clips. In the chat room says, lost $900 on Alex. Never will I bet again until UFC 317, LOL. Says he was there. Good event, he's saying, though. Overall, Wreck the Soul says, no Shama now. Shama hype is done. Alex is overrated. Holy cow, he's going in hard on him. Manu says, the Paul Craig legacy is getting even better. And Dave Hughes with MMA Weekly says, I had it 3-2 Alex. Mike Bond, let me ask you this. Did Ankalaev win the title or did Pereira fight poorly? Because it sounds like they're going to reheat this bad boy and give it to us again. So let's start getting fired up for the next one whenever it goes down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're giving nearly enough credit to Magomed Ankalaev here for this performance. I think he kept the pressure on. He made Alex Pereira uncomfortable fighting off the back foot, which he doesn't have to do that often. I think it was a lot of what he offered, even just as I said earlier, the mere possibility and threat of the takedown can change a fighter completely. And I think you saw that hesitancy in Alex Pereira here. So I think a lot of what happened here was the product of what Ankalaev was doing. Could Alex have taken more risks? All those kind of things? Sure. But I think Ankalaev definitely had a lot to do with that. And as I said, Alex Pereira landed 11 significant head strikes over the course of 25 minutes. That's just not going to get it done. The leg kicks were fine, but he just needed to do more in this fight. And I think maybe he swings one of those rounds in his favor and you see it be and still instead of and new here. So I think you got to give more credit to the game plan of Ankalaev. And I think in a rematch, definitely going to be more interesting on both sides. I think Ankalaev will be much more confident in knowing what he can do. They felt the power, the strength, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll see. Ankalaev has been good in rematches in his UFC career as well with Ion Kutlaba and Johnny Walker. Obviously, Alex Pereira is neither of those guys, and he's much better. But I'm very curious to see how a rematch looks and what adjustments both guys make, because I don't think this was the best of what they both had to offer, but I do still think there was some important takeaways from this fight.
Goes, like I mentioned, Dana White is open to running it back. Do you agree or disagree with Dana White?
It depends. There's so many times where you have to look at the sport from a business standpoint, from fan standpoint. If Alex Pereira wants the rematch, I don't know how you don't give it to him. The guy's done a lot of favors for the company. He was a dominant champ. I say you do run it back. I like the fire that he had at the end. That, to me, like Mike pointed out, I do feel like there are things that can be done on both sides that would make this fight more of an interesting fight the second time around. But as a business, if you're the UFC, you need to figure out, you really need to sit down and talk to this guy and find out if this was a bad night or if this is a case of somebody getting his number. If it's a case of somebody getting his number, 3-4 months, that's not going to change that. He needs more time. So it just depends on how you look at it. But if it were me, I think I'd run it back.
Okay. Well, he definitely deserves it. He had 3 title defenses. He was on his way to trying to tie Chuck Liddell and Frank Shamrock. Came up short, but he has bailed the UFC out. So even though this fight was kind of a dud, Dana did look like he wants to give it back to us. So, Danny, the question here is, what are the options for Ankalaev if for some reason Pereira isn't ready?
None. That's why the immediate rematch has to happen. Like that.
What about Blachowicz if he gets past Olberg? You wouldn't want to maybe.
Sure. I mean, sporting wise, like, yeah, you could merit a title shot, obviously, but like, I don't think the UFC has a lot of interest in making Olberg versus Ankalaev, and they definitely don't have any interest in making Jan Blachowicz versus Ankalaev too, which is the reason why Ankalaev took so long to get a damn title shot in the first place. That's probably the last fight that pissed off Dana White to that degree that we've seen. So yeah, I think it's got to be the immediate rematch. But look, I guess sporting wise, if for whatever reason Pereira is going up to heavyweight or is injured or whatever, is not available for a title fight, which is hard to believe because that dude is ready to go at any moment. Yeah, I guess the winner of Blachowicz versus Olberg would be it.
What about Yuri Prochazka? I think he's the pretty clear guy.
He's had like a lot of shots, no? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, he's the highest ranked guy, and he's coming off a fight of the night win. There's a little shit talk between them.
He did look a lot better in his last fight. I was tell me if I was being harsh, guys. I told Goes yesterday on Junkie Radio.
You're kind of breaking up, Mike.
Okay, so I was tell me if I'm being harsh. I was telling Goes on Junkie Radio, the way Alex Pereira fought, I almost thought like the Yuri that just beat Hill could beat him. Izzy, if he wanted to move up, could beat him.
No,
DDP could beat him. Like Alex just did not. Look at what Mike said. What, 12 strikes in 25 minutes? Where he just didn't have it, man. I don't know what it was. That he just looked that bad.
You're right. He did look flat, but I think we are. I think in general, like a lot of people are not taking into account, and this is something that Mike highlighted, the takedown threat. Like the fact that was there, even though it didn't really turn into a reality, but the fact that like that threat was there, like I think it really did sort of dampen a lot of Pereira's striking. I don't think Pereira had the confidence to go down and march him down like he did Khalil Roundtree, because Khalil Roundtree was never going to shoot. But yeah, like he didn't look good, but also like Ankalaev partially made him look that way as well.
I don't know, man. He stopped 4, I think, over 25 minutes. He wasn't getting hurt. You know, that's their reward. You can't take me down. All right, you're about to eat some fists. And he just wouldn't even throw them, much less throw them and not punish them.
I get where you're coming from. Like there was certainly like a level of meanness that was absent in that performance. Like we've seen when Pereira was down in that first Israel Adesanya fight, like he came out in that 5th to like knock him out, like, and you can sense it. Same thing with the Roundtree performance in Jiri. There's a sense of like wanting to do damage and this cold-blooded look about him that was just absent. So I think it's a combination of both. Ankalaev made him look that way partially and had a great game plan, and Pereira also didn't show up.
That's part of the game, though, guys. Like, you got to be well-rounded, especially if we're talking about being one of the greats in our sport. And, you know, the same way we're talking about it on one side, you got to look at from Ankalaev's perspective, right? He didn't get the takedown, but he didn't fold. He made adjustments, and he had worked on his striking well enough to actually stand there with the guy and trade. So, I mean, it's really something. Like I said, man, they really need to sit down and figure out what happened to him that night. I'm praying that we hear news he was sick or something like that, because if he wasn't, and that's just the way he folded in the fight, it's not a good look.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sport, though, guys. Like, he fought the 4 title fights in like 12 months. He's fighting the best guy. Like, it's a coin toss every time you go in there. You're not going to perform every time. And the guys who do, the George St. Pierre's, the John Joneses, the Jose Aldo, that's why they are some of the greatest fighters of all time, to be able to go in there and do it time after time after time against the best guy. It's really, really hard. And Alex Pereira is still pretty new in MMA, and to do it back to back to back to back to back like this, it's even more difficult. So this is just the game sometimes, man. It's really tough to keep winning every time at this level.
Goes, please don't tell me you think Pereira at heavyweight is something you want to see, right? I think we're done with that.
I don't want to see it. I could see how the UFC could possibly sell it to some degree, but I don't want to see it. Yeah, like I think you might have said it. Your audio went out for a second, but I think John Jones would have destroyed him, right? Isn't that what you said? I don't want
to that way now.
Destroyed him too.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that experiment and you take him up and he's not going to get an immediate shot, the only guy, like, if you want him to get a possible win, maybe put him up against a Cyril Gane, somebody that's going to stand in front of him and strike, maybe something like that. But for the most part, when you look at that roster, I think it's going to catch up to him.
This would be the time to do it, though, right? If he's going to go to heavyweight, you can say he's coming off like a close loss. He didn't really lose. He's bored. He, blah, blah, blah. You could make some excuses. Now let's go up to heavyweight. He should have been coming off the win. He's going to let Magomed Ankalaev do his thing, and now it's time to go to heavyweight. I think that's a possible move here.
The only guy I'd see him do well with, and he's already been cut, is Jairzinho. It can't be even someone aggressive like Sergey puts him out. Aspinall puts him out. Even Volkov. Yes.
I don't know.
Jairzinho at least is looking to counter, and there might be some openings there, and he's not going to threaten him with a takedown.
And you really hated this performance.
It was bad, man. I get pissed, dude.
I mean, to say that he could only beat Jairzinho at heavyweight,
cards and all that, and then when it comes to pay-per-views, we're like this. So when I see a Carla Rose or Leon against Bilal, 5 a.m., it's like, come on, man. This is it. This is a world title fight, and to be flat over 25 minutes, not even like he had one bad round and then he got going. No, flat. It could have been possibly 2-2. Your life changes. Pay-per-view points, the strap itself, the options you have. John Jones over here, go down to middleweight. Does Dricus want some? Does Izzy want? Who wants some? I'm threatening Liddell, Ortiz. Like there's so many things, and it's just gone. And you could see it in his face at the end. You could see he's like, I done fucked up. When Rogan was interviewing him, you could see it in his face. I shouldn't have gone to Australia. I should have been hunkering down. You could just see it. I hope he comes back strong because he's one of my favorites, man. I love his walkout and everything, but that was a flat performance. We got to call it like it is. We got to move on, too. And by the way, don't forget, send those questions for the Q&A at the end. If it's a statement you want us to react to, okay, or just leave us a question, and in the last 10 minutes, we will answer them. But let's talk about the rest of the card, guys, starting with the highlight, Justin Gaethje. It was a pretty damn good fight. I can't complain about that one. But what came out of it exactly? Danny, let's get your reaction first to the co-main event.
Yeah, I think this was a really surprising line that I saw entering UFC 313. I thought exactly this. I thought that Justin Gaethje was going to win a decision. Like he had a full camp. He's still like a pretty high level fighter. Yeah, he was coming off a bad knockout loss, but we've seen him get like knocked out pretty bad before and come back. I wasn't as worried as other people. And look, Rafael Fiziev, he was coming off a year and a half layoff, big surgery, obviously with the ACL injury, two losses. And not only that, but these two had fought previously and not so long ago, 2023. And, Justin Gaethje came out on top. So I was shocked that he was an underdog. But anyways, he went in there, did his thing. He looked good. I think he is a little bit past his prime. He didn't look his prime self, but even a little past his prime version of Justin Gaethje, he's still a very damn good fighter. He's a tough guy. Proved that, and I think this was the most important thing. Proved that his chin's still there. He took some big shots from Fiziev, and he's still got power. He's still mean. Like he's a solid fighter, and I don't know what his future holds, because certainly he's in a weird and very tough spot at 155. But we got Gaethje for at least 1 or 2 more fights. I think we got a good version of Gaethje.
Goes, did you like the fight?
I did. Going in, the odds were kind of weird, but when you think about it, to me, that Justin Gaethje that walked out wasn't just fighting Fiziev. I think he was still kind of fighting Holloway and what happened to him, right? These moments that these fighters have happen in front of millions of people. It's hard to shake something like that off. If you look at his face when he was walking out of the cage, you could just see the sense of relief. I think maybe there was a little bit of himself, maybe doubting himself going into that fight. But Fiziev put on a hell of a performance. And I'll tell you what, you give that guy a full camp, that fight might have gone a different way. I mean, early on, the speed was something really hard to deal with. He looked pretty tremendous in that fight, despite having a loss.
He can't fault his corner, too. His corner kept telling him, do not close, do not link up with him, keep the distance. That's where you're losing the fight. And somehow he kept walking into those uppercuts. All right, Mike Bond, your reaction, and then let's segue from that to what are Gaethje's options?
Yeah, I think Goes put it well there. There was definitely still a little bit of a mental hurdle there. Justin said it himself. How could it not be when you get knocked out like that at his age? Like, you don't know if your chin's going to hold up against the next guy, especially someone as dangerous as Fiziev. But he looked, for the most part, I mean, we were getting like the promises of the WSOF Justin Gaethje. I don't think that guy showed up. It was like, even though it won fight of the night, again, you could make an argument this was in like the bottom tier of Justin Gaethje UFC fights, which is still kind of crazy and speaks to the guy. I mean, 14 bonuses and 14 UFC fights. Like, this is absurd, and probably no one's ever going to do this again. So appreciate this guy while he's here and while he's doing this. I don't think it is insanely unrealistic that he gets a lightweight title shot against Islam Makhachev next. I think a lot of stuff is going to have to break his way, but look at the guys out there, man. Like, he's got the name, he's got the style. You want an exciting fight for Islam Makhachev. Like, you know it's going to be this. You don't know what the Arman fight's going to look like. He's already been there. He's already beat Charles. Obviously, that has the potential to be exciting. But what has Islam made very clear? He's made it clear he wants fresh opponents, and he's made it clear that he wants to fight Justin Gaethje at some point. He wanted him if he won at UFC 300. So I think this is a fight that's desired by both guys. It's just, I think the big elephant in the room here is Ilia Topuria. But if Ilia does not get the title shot and it goes the way that he needs to win one at lightweight first, and the UFC is not super happy with Arman Tsarukyan, and maybe Charles Oliveira plays a little hardball or something, I don't think it's impossible a situation come around where this works out for Justin Gaethje.
Danny, by merit, Arman, Oliveira, Ilia Topuria, and Justin Gaethje, who deserves the next title shot by merit?
Arman. He was the number 1 contender. He never fought him, and he's still the number 1 contender in my eyes. Now, obviously, the UFC didn't like that he pulled out the day of the fight or the day before, before weigh-ins, I believe. But still, like, he didn't lose. That fight's still pending. He's not getting the shot for other circumstances, but yeah, that guy's still the number 1 contender. Then following that, I know Ilia only has 1 win at 155, but damn, that fight would be a lot of fun to watch. And I do think that because of what he's done at 145, I do think like at 55, it would be a little fair to give him a shot. Gaethje has had his shot. Oliveira has had his shot as well. Tsarukyan hasn't in terms of a title fight. So I think those two, in my opinion, are the guys.
What's bigger business between Gaethje and Topuria? And Oliveira. Who's the biggest paycheck for the champ and the UFC?
That's a tough one. I feel like Topuria right now, just because like everything that he's done, but I do wonder like if that translates into bias, because certainly the buzz is there like online and stuff like that. But at this point, like a Charles Oliveira or a Justin Gaethje, they're institutions, right? Like those are guys that have been around for years, and people like they can bring back fans that haven't watched the sport in the last 2 or 3 years, and they're like, oh shit, Oliveira's fighting for a belt, I'll watch that. Gaethje's fighting for the belt, I'll watch that. With Topuria, he's more like, new blood in a sense. Like he's really only gained the people's respect in the last year or so when he became champion and knocked out Holloway. So, that's a very tough question. I don't know. What do you guys think?
think Taporia, man, that guy's something
Yeah.
else. He can build a fight, right? The other two are just kind of more calm. They don't really say too much. But I think a couple interviews with Taporia screaming and saying the things he does, I think people get jazzed up for that.
I want to see Makhachev, Topuria, and Gaethje versus Sarukian. Mike, you were gonna say something?
No, I was gonna pretty much agree with that. I mean, Gaethje's out there saying, "I need my perfect night. I'm gonna have any chance." Islam Ilya's out there saying, "I'm gonna knock this guy out of the ground. He's not on my level." I think the fans get a little more interested in the latter.
Mike, for the matchmaker piece, who did you like for Fiziev?
I didn't do him specifically.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's probably not like, co-main event lose. I had to do the title fight and this one. Anyone, okay. I don't think his stock down. I think the Gamrot rematch is still there. Apparently they had offered before this opportunity came around. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But you got to be careful, man. Like, I don't think his stock drops here or with the Gamrot fight, but on paper, 3 losses in a row for Fiziev. So he's got to be careful.
He looked good, and on 10 days' notice, I tipped my hat to him. I wasn't too happy about him being the choice, but he did come out and he fought well. But Gaethje, man, and those uppercuts, that guy's a zombie. Ignacio Bahamundes had a great night as well. Reaction from the guys goes, what'd you think, man? It was quick, but he got the job done.
Yeah, no, I've always liked this kid. I think there's tons of upside with him. The problem is, he has this tendency to get a couple wins and then he has a little bit of a hiccup. If he can get past that and really start to put things together, I think he'd be pretty exciting. And he's actually fun to listen to when he gets the mic as well. I really like everything about this kid.
Danny, your reaction and what's his potential? What do you think, man? You kind of know this guy pretty good through Hablemos MMA.
Yeah, I think this guy's legit, and yeah, he as Go said, like he's had some setbacks before. He's lost twice in the UFC, but those were like against top guys, and I feel like in this performance, we were gonna find out if he was gonna get over that hump, and I think he did. He beat a ranked opponent, Jalen Turner, a guy that's a proven veteran and battle tested, and expect him to be in the rankings once they update on Tuesday. This guy's legit, man. He's what, like 26 years old. He's got tons of potential. He trains with Bilal Muhammad, the UFC welterweight champion. That's got to boost his confidence and his skill level. He's huge for the weight class. He's got, really good, accurate striking, good power, tough guy, very good chin as well. And all of a sudden in this fight, he's showing that he can be dangerous off his back as well. So yeah, I think the sky's the limit for him. I think once we see these older names like the Poiriers, the Gaethje, the Chandlers retiring, Bahamundes is going to be right up there in the top 5. I believe.
Think so, huh? Mike, do you agree? You see that kind of potential for Bahamundes?
It's hard to say. I think it's too soon. I mean, you're talking about his biggest win coming out as 2 against a guy who's clearly got out the doors. I'll pause a little bit, but he definitely, I think everything Danny said there is on point. He's got all the traits to be something good. It is the toughest division in the sport, so it's not going to be for anyone to climb into the top 5 and stay there. So see what happens, but this was definitely a good win for the Bahamundes supporters.
Goes Jalen Turner retired and then maybe was talked out of it, but it looks like he really is retired. What do you think, man? Should he walk away? He's only 29. He's got a interesting build to him. Those long, lanky guys can cause some trouble. He's a SoCaler like we are, but what do you think, man? Just too emotional right now to make that decision? Although he did say he's been thinking about this since UFC 300. That's almost a year. It's almost been a year since that event.
Yeah, I mean, it is MMA, and MMA retirements don't generally last that long. But I'm one of those guys that says if your head is not in the game and you don't want to be there, then you shouldn't. However, I would advise him, he's just one of the bigger dudes. Maybe try and put on a little bit of muscle and try welterweight and see what happens, at least one, and then kind of give it your all for that one fight. If you still feel the same way, go away. But it'll be sad to see him go because I actually enjoy seeing his name pop up on a card.
Me too. We met the Tarantula at the expo, and it seemed like he was all in. It didn't seem like someone that was going to retire. It seemed like it was a guy that was building, not even reaching his prime. But if it is the end, we wish him the best. And congrats to Bahamundes. I'm not sure I'm with Danny on sky's the limit, but I do see him like fringe top 10, kind of like where Hooker's kind of at. I don't ever see Hooker wearing a strap, but damn, he's fun to watch and he can win a couple fights here and there. But we'll see. I'd happily like to be proven wrong, or maybe not. He's Chilean, man. We're Peruvian. They're rivals down there in South America. But anyway, how about another highlight from the event, guys? Let's pick it up, and it's my responsibility. I'm saying it was flat. I'm still harping on the Pereira Ankalaev. So let's pick it up. What was something that you did like from the card, goes?
Dude, the way it started, Diaz and Santos. Oh my God, what? That's
That
one
was
where
Friday
you when you walk out of the cage, you walk right up to the matchmakers, Dana White, if they're there, and you say, what more can I possibly do? This is exactly what you want. It's just a shame that there weren't as many people there to witness it. But holy crap, man, they were throwing everything at each other, and neither guy was really backing off very much. It was really, really fun and exciting.
I think only Theo Vaughn and Mike Vaughn watched it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great fight. They deserved the 50 G's, man. It sucks that they didn't get it. Mike, give me another highlight from UFC 313.
Obviously, Mauricio Rufy opening the main card with that spinning wheel kick knockout of King Green, the 16th spinning wheel kick finish in UFC history. Probably one of the most violent. I mean, when you got Edson Barboza up in the comments being like, that was fire on all the highlights on social media, I think you did something pretty solid in that category. Just an absolutely brutal finish. The fighting nerds are on fire. Cannot be stopped. Look at that right there. Like, this team has just got everything going right there. And this was a highlight for the highlights. Not good enough to make Sportsnet's top 10 number 1. Apparently, I saw when I was walking back to my room on Saturday, it landed at number 2 behind a lacrosse goal. So guess it wasn't quite there, but nevertheless, here we go. Great highlight for him. Great highlight for the UFC. Sucks that I guess a lot of people couldn't see it, those pay-per-view issues to start out the window, but they put it out on every platform for free. If you haven't seen it by now, just go seek it out. There's probably a million angles of it now. So great win. King Green, a lot of questions around him. He's taken a lot of damage in these past few fights. Maybe keep those hands up, buddy.
Was the lacrosse player blindfolded or what? How did he beat that kick? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Not good of the year so far, Danny, for sure, I think.
Danny, how about you, man? Another highlight.
Well, I got to shout out Carlos Leal because his performance against Alex Morono was brutal. And I do think at 170, that dude's trouble and he's going to get some solid.
See the way he was going
wins.
To the body when he was standing there?
He was nasty. He was nasty. You know, like you're doing good body work when a fighter's like, all right, just punch me in the face. Just don't go back to the body. And they like bring their hands down because, they're in so much pain. But I just wanted to quickly highlight that. I just also wanted to mention Francis Marshall. If there was a robbery on the card, because a lot of people were saying, oh, Pereira didn't come close to winning that fight, this and that. A fight that wasn't close and that was a robbery. Francis Marshall, I thought he clearly won the first and third round of that fight against Marion Santos. Somehow he ends up losing. And in one card, he won a 30-27. And then in the other two, he lost 29-28. So a bit of a puzzling scorecard there from the judges.
Yeah. I can't lie. Extreme Couture guy and all, but I really thought Marshall was going to win. And if you look at MMA decisions on that one, because Pereira did have some love. It was pretty split, but there was more Ankalaev's.
Nolan and Matt Wells from our site, our own, they scored it for Pereira, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was 60-40, but this one was all Marshalls, about 15 of them, and 12 of the 15 were 30-27 Marshalls, which go in line with one of the judges' scorecards. I think it was Derek Cleary. I did not see that one from Myron Santos, but I was actually on the good end of that because I've been on the other end of that when it comes to the gambling side. So I will take it. But yeah, that one, we have to give some love to Francis Marshall, man, because I thought he did what he took to win. And so did Bruno Ferreira. I just didn't think he'd do it by submission. That guy's such a hard hitter. And I was hoping this fight would make it to the pay-per-view because I thought it was going to be fire. But yeah, he got himself a nice submission, showing a well-rounded game. Petrosian's a big middleweight, and I've always thought he could be trouble, but that's two finishes that he's got to come back from. He's got some soul searching to do. I like Petrosian as well, but my love goes to Ferreira. That's why I wore the green shirt. Kind of look like a Hulk like him, right, guys? Or no?
Yeah, just like it.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, don't forget about
him for a second.
Take it easy, everyone. The Q&A is coming up here, so you got just a few more minutes, and then we'll go over some of your questions and comments. But let's talk about topic 3. All right. So for years, Dana White has teased re-entering the boxing world. Well, that time has finally come. Not with Zuffa Boxing, if you'll recall that T-shirt he used to wear from time to time. It's not with them. He's going into business with Sheikh Turki. Let's hear it straight from the men themselves, and then we'll unpack this.
What's up, guys? We have just done a deal to start a new boxing league with Turki, who absolutely loves the sport of boxing.
I am very happy today. I give the flag of boxing to the best man who can handle it. He have a tough job now, but I am sure he will be delivering to the people and the fans the magnificent league and get boxing great again.
The model is proven to deliver the fights that the fans want to see. The best will fight the best, and the fighters will continue to move up the rankings and become world champions. We will continue to make announcements on where you can watch and all the rest of the details on the business as we get closer to the launch. I'll see you soon.
Man, Dana White must be in. He just calls him Turkey. I think the other day he called him Big Turkey. Not even Sheikh Turkey or His Excellency. Good on Dana. They must be boys. But all right, guys, what's your reaction to this? You know, it is the boxing world, but it's the biggest presence in MMA doing his thing. And we've seen some MMA guys come over and do some boxing. So I don't think we're out of line covering it one bit. All right, we'll start with Mike Bond. TKO Group and Turki Alalshikh enter boxing. Your reaction?
Is it bad to say I don't really care? I mean, like, this is still very early. I mean, you heard Dana talk about it Saturday more at the post-fight press conference for UFC 313, and like I think he said something like a 12 to 18 month timeline before like this could even be fully in swing. So like I'm almost putting a pin in this for now. I mean, there's so many questions. I think if you listen to the media he did in New York, the most productive interview he did was it with Darren Ravel, or it was with someone. I don't think it was Ravel. It was someone else. Dan Raphael, sorry. And who's obviously a big time boxing reporter and has been there for a long time, and basically said they're trying to like ignore the Ali Act and, you know, want single divisional titles and want to go back to like the old school weight classes. As Dana said there, the model is, I guess, proven, and they feel like it's going to work in boxing. I have a lot of hesitation about this, what kind of fights they will get together, what type of fighters they will sign, and how they will grow, all that stuff. I do think, you know, given Turkey's resources and the deals they have, Canelo, things like that, there will be something that has like UFC or TKO Boxing Association or promotion or push or whatever. I think we expect that. But in terms of like making the UFC of boxing, so to speak, and having it replicate what they've done here, I have a lot of pause about that. And I think it's very much a wait and see approach when it comes to all that stuff.
All right, Goes, you're a big boxing fan as well. Are you fired up for this announcement, this merging here of these, you know, these two minds?
It doesn't make much sense to me. I don't understand. Look, with the UFC, Dana White's got to be under tremendous stress. Just, I can't imagine what it's like to look at his phone and some of the texts he probably gets, right? Then he creates the slap fighting, which puts more on his plate. And now you want to jump into boxing? Like, dude, the model that the UFC does, if you take any pieces of it, I just don't see it working in boxing. Like in mixed martial arts, money talks a lot, right? You can make a lot of things happen. But in boxing, a lot of these guys, they already have money. So you can't really like drag them into things. I'm sure if it's ridiculous money, of course, you'll get some people to do some stuff. But for the most part, these guys have already made a lot of money and they're looking for other things in contracts, things that usually the UFC is not too excited about, right? Giving those types of things to their fighters. So I don't know, man. This just seems like something that's going to drive them crazy. The boxing world can sometimes be the Wild West, and you're making big promises when you're saying the best are going to fight the best because you don't have access to all the best. That's the difficult thing about boxing, is sometimes you're dealing with so many entities and they just all want the same thing. Nobody wants to give up anything. So to me, this seems like a nightmare for him to try and get involved. If you're going to doubt a guy like Dana White, that's kind of tough to do because he has done some pretty crazy things, but I don't think the boxing world is a good fit for Dana White.
I think Dana White is just a tutor for the next couple of years, and he's getting paid handsomely. So some rich college student just didn't study, and he needs help. But I think that's what it is. Personally, the money was too good to pass up. I don't think he needed something else on his plate. But here we are. but I bet you he's getting paid handsomely, and then Dana's just going to show him the ins and outs. But they're also doing business on MMA. It'll work out. Danny, your reaction, man. What do you think of this?
I have more of a concerned take on this. Like I do wonder if this does have success, like what it could do to boxing, because we've always looked at boxing, or at least a lot of MMA fighters, the top ones, have always looked at boxing as the end goal, right? Francis Ngannou, Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal. You mentioned like all the top stars have always, even Anderson Silva at some point wanted to box, Roy Jones Jr. And then, well, he eventually went to boxing, but there's certain freedoms there that they get that they don't get in mixed martial arts, that they don't get in the UFC. And it seems that, again, we don't know all the details, but by bringing the UFC model to the boxing model, it looks like they want to own the titles. For those that don't know, that only strictly watch mixed martial arts, the titles are not owned by the promotions. Matchroom, Golden Boy, they don't own the titles. There are separate organizations, independent organizations, WBO, BA, etc., that own these belts. So now it looks like TKO wants to bring their own belt, own it, very much like they do with the UFC belt, and sort of have boxing fights under the UFC model, which we've seen that for fans, it's probably good. We do get more fights, I do think, in terms of the best fighting the best in mixed martial arts compared to boxing, at least at a higher frequency rate. But like we've seen how bad it can be for the fighters, right? We've seen how bad it can be for competing promotions. So I don't know. I am concerned as far as, and they're getting backed by Big Turkey, by Saudi with all this money. Like, I don't know. To me, this is not good news for combat sports, in my opinion.
You think it'll succeed though?
Yeah, I mean, you got so much money, and Dana White is not a dumb guy. He knows what he's doing. And in terms of the Muhammad Ali Act and all that, well, if Donald Trump is president, that's his buddy. So we know that maybe certain things can change, could potentially change. So, yeah, I do think that out of all the new organizations coming out there, like TKO, whose stock price is soaring right now, and, you got the Saudi money, Dana White has a lot of connections. I do think that they can have a lot of success, yeah.
So, guys, listen, UFC and WWE are under TKO, and now we got Power Slap that gets pushed by Dana, and it happens to piggyback, or actually it's precedes some big UFC shows. And now boxing, is going to maybe come into play. Are you guys in favor of multiple events in a weekend? Back to Mike.
I think it depends on the circumstances, obviously, but I don't know, like how much crossover is that? If you had no weekend with all that, how many people are going to all three of those, or how many are just choosing one or whatever? Like from their perspective, I'm sure it's cost effective and you can maximize site fees from certain things. We're giving you 3 events instead of 1, so pay us 3 times the money, like whatever the case may be. This seems more like a money play and just maximizing your resources when it comes to location and travel and all that type of stuff. But like, how many people are sitting there being like, boys, like the TKO weekend is coming to town, we're going to go to Power Slap Thursday, Wrestling Friday, and UFC Saturday. Like, they'll be like, okay, like I'll see you Saturday. I think maybe that's the case for some of these people. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what the crossover is for this, but if they're implementing this, I assume they have metrics, they have data, they have something that tells them this is a good thing to do. So
do you guys remember when the UFC did 3 events? And everyone on Sunday was
if they were doing that would be a different story. But we're talking about 3 things that are so completely different. Yeah. So I don't know.
No, I know, but I mean, my point was 3 in our sport of MMA, but by Sunday everyone was just melted and couldn't take more. Yeah, I guess I was thinking more of how Power Slap and UFC seem to be working for some people. What do you think, Danny? I guess Mike is right. The WWE crowd just isn't too interested in a boxing match or an MMA match. Some, but a low percentage.
Yeah, I think the crossover is not very big. I do think it's a lot bigger between boxing and MMA, especially once we get, those athletes like competing in the other sport. And look, if we are talking about Power Slap right now because the UFC has sort of made sure to promote that through their social media accounts and all that, like I'm sure if they were to do a big push for boxing, and one of the reasons why boxing is also not as successful as MMA in terms of like today's viewership is also because it's hard to follow. It really is. There's so many belts, mandatories, like there's no clear. The UFC has made it very simple for for people to follow. You look at the rankings, okay, this guy's up next, et cetera, et cetera. Boxing's a little bit more complicated. So I can see a world like way down the line, years down the line, where like boxing does become a lot more of a thing, and there is a bigger crossover because maybe the UFC or TKO makes it a lot easier to digest and consume.
How about you guys? You like boxing, WWE, and MMA? I think Power Slap's the only one you're not haven't warmed up to.
Mhm.
And jiu-jitsu, don't forget, Fight Pass Invitational.
I think location has a lot to do with it as well. It's kind of weird for us, for George and I, because we live in Vegas, so it's a little different for us. But if I take myself back to when I lived in California, it would be hard for you to tell me we're going to go to Vegas, but the whole time we're going to spend it watching some sort of combat sport nonstop, and we're never going to get to the tables. We're never going to get to a club, a show, any of that type of stuff. After a while, I think you go, come on, man, what am I even doing here? Like, so I don't know. I could maybe take in 2 max, but I think after that, after 2 events, and you come at me with, hey, you want to go see Power Slap? You might get a Power Slap from me.
Yeah. Nina Drama's gonna be hella busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking back to vacations I've had. Like, I remember one time I went to Brazil just on vacation. When I landed, my buddy goes, hey, you're in luck. The Stones are in concert like in a night or 2, you know? So I was like, okay, I got to go on vacation, saw the Stones, I saw a Flamingo game, but that was spread out over like a week or 10 days. It is hard to go back to back, man, especially in Vegas. It tears you apart. Look at Mike Bond. He can't even wait to get on that plane and get some rest, get back to the Great White North. He's been pulled into different directions as well. All right, time for the Q&A, guys. Thank you to everyone that submitted one, and if you keep submitting one and we get through these quick, we'll get to yours. So it's not too late. Here's the first one. Question for the panel: where would you put Ankalaev and Pereira in the pound for pound rankings now? I don't know if you guys have them up, so I'll just tell you real quick the way it looks, guys. At least for us, John Jones, Alex Pereira, Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria are the top 4. Jones, Pereira, Makhachev, Topuria. So the question is, with Ankalaev's win over Pereira, does he invade that top 4? I see Pereira maybe dropping out of the top 4, and then we make the adjustment from Ankalaev to be above him, but I don't see him higher than even that top 5. I mean, I don't even want to reward him going over Dricus du Plessis and Alexander Pantoja, who have title defenses. This guy hasn't had a title defense. He's just got a big win over a big figure in Alex Pereira. What are your guys' thoughts, Danny?
I think you gotta take him out of the top 5 just because he's not a champion anymore. Like, how can you put him above other champions that are reigning and have a belt right now? But yeah, and I feel like the pound for pound, like, yeah, dude's very good, but like we've known he's had these issues, like grappling wise. Like, he's not the perfect fighter. There are guys out there like Makhachev, like Topuria, like Bilal Muhammad, dude. That guy's so underrated. That can do it all. Like, I think he's out of the top 5 in my opinion.
Goes?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. When you're talking pound for pound, I mean, you really, really have to be close to perfect. And that he just didn't fall under that.
All right, Mike hasn't lost in 13 fights, 21-1. Not a bad resume.
Yeah, I think I would put Ankalaev probably in like the 7-8 range, maybe behind Tom Aspinall there, and then slide Pereira down behind him in like the 9-10 spot.
I forgot. Aspinall's been on fire too, man. Waxing fools. Guys, all right. Did John Silva, this comes from Karate Ted Tunes, did John Silva help himself or hurt himself at the 314 press conference? He kind of came across as a jerk. Mike?
I mean, that whole thing went on a little too long. If you reduced it by like, 50%, I think it would have been perfect for that thing. But it was to the point, like, we got a lot of other dudes up here I want to hear from. So can we just chill out on it a little bit? But yeah, man, I mean, if he loses to Bryce Mitchell, you're going to have one of those trash talking gone wrong compilations all over John Silva. So he's setting himself up for something. But how can you not like have the confidence this man has? Look what his teammate Rufy just did. Look what he's been doing. So like, as we said, the fighting nerds are on fire. So they're riding that high right now. And I think we saw that confidence of John Silva, who is a very unique personality in his own right.
Danny, they're coming to your hood. You pumped up a bit about this fight, and did John Silva take it too far?
I mean, Bryce Mitchell took it too far. We're talking about people that take shit too far. Look, He's building up the fight. We're talking about it now. It's certainly a weird one because he, I don't mind the whole bringing the globe and stuff like that. But then once it gets to the other stuff where from the controversial comments that Bryce Mitchell said, it does get a little weird. I still feel a little bit uncomfortable about Bryce Mitchell just returning to work like nothing and fighting next month. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But the whole situation is just very strange.
Goes in the chat. Aaron09 or just Aaron, sorry, says I got 10K on Aspinall. What are your thoughts? That's a statement, not a question. It sounds like it's probably versus John Jones. You like that bet? Are you walking up with Aaron saying, fist bump, let's do this? Or do you think Jones might get him?
10K is a lot of money to be playing around with. I don't know that just in our sport in general, you can feel that safe putting that much money on somebody. Realistically, if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably be with him. But whenever you're dealing with John Jones, you just never know, man. It's tough.
All right. Chris Goes Wild says, someone on Twitter said Alex Pereira had a virus and a broken hand. Is there any truth to that? Mike, I guess since you were there, what have you kind of heard behind? I haven't heard any excuses. In fact, he put out a video, showed him and his family, said, he maybe got a little bit of a bruise here or whatever, but he didn't claim any injuries or didn't claim any excuses.
Well, if someone said it on Twitter, it must be true. But no, I have not heard.
Someone.
I haven't heard anything on that vein. As Danny said earlier, there was some like norovirus. That's what had Curtis Blades come out of the fight, going around the Apex the UFC Performance Institute. But yeah, no, I haven't heard anything. I mean, a hand injury might explain the lack of punches thrown by Alex Pereira, but no, I haven't heard anything. It is Monday though, so I assume if we get some excuse or reasoning stuff coming out of the Pereira camp, it'll probably start leaking in the next like 48 to 72 hours here. But no, I have not heard sitting here right now that Alex Pereira was compromised in any way.
Did the norovirus also claim Sexy Mexi?
I think he had a case of the 2 weight cuts in 2 weeks syndrome, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And for those wondering, I wasn't talking about Goes. I was talking about John Castaneda. He pulled out of his fight versus Chris Gutierrez. Bummer, man. Chris Gutierrez went through a couple different people there, and he didn't get a chance to fight. All right, here comes another one. Danny, this one's for you. Lazy Bed says, does the UFC now have a problem with champions who find success via methods that don't exactly translate to scintillating television?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, everyone that they've sort of pushed to become champion has lost their belt, right? Sean O'Malley. I guess Leon wasn't really pushed, but again, the guys that weren't pushed, like Bilal Muhammad, Merab, Ankalaev, they eventually got their due and they eventually won their belts. So in terms of like star power in the championship level, yeah, they are lacking a little bit right now. And I'm sure the UFC isn't too happy with these guys as champion, not because they got anything against them, but they're just not as popular as some other guys in the division that could, be better for business.
Here's the last one from Forrest Daniels. Question for the panel. What do you want to see more? Topuria versus Makhachev or Bones Jones versus Aspinall? And who wins in your opinion? Thank you and have a great day. Goes, what do you want to see more between Topuria and Makhachev?
There's one right answer, Goes.
Bones and Aspinall.
It's Bones and Aspinall. I want to see that. I want to get it out of the way, get it done with, never hear from it ever again. The other one, I feel like it can't, maybe if it doesn't happen today, it can happen tomorrow.
Okay, and it sounded based off not fist bumping that other guy on the way to the window. You're taking Jones at this point, or?
No, I'm taking Aspinall.
Aspinall, all right. Which one do you want to see, Danny, between those two?
Jones Aspinall has to happen. I mean, interim champion, regular champion, it has to happen. That's the fight. That's the biggest fight you can make today.
Mike Bond?
Yeah, it's a unanimous there. I think Islam and Ilya can exist as their own entities for quite a while here if they don't fight, especially if Jack Della beats Bilal or something and moves up to Islam moves up to welterweight. I don't think that's like a fight we have to see, but we have to see the interim champion who's been interim champion for 65% of the time John Jones has been undisputed champion. So it seems like things are moving in the right direction if you go off what Tom Aspinall posted last night and what Dana said to me at the press conference. So let's hope.
By the way, yeah, I'm glad that you pushed Dana on that. By the summer, he said Aspinall and Jones will happen. Aspinall had done a video last Sunday saying it's just a matter of Jones figuring it out with the UFC or something like that. But Dana kind of confirmed that part's done. Now they just find a location and date. That's what we're down to? But Jones has agreed on the money.
I have heard this week that they figured out the money stuff with John Jones. I won't drop the figure I heard quite yet. I'd like to, vet that a little bit more. But I guess the nugget I will drop here on Spinning Back Clique is I have heard August is the likely date.
MSG or Vegas?
We will see. I would not be surprised if they do 2 events at MSG in 2025. I'll say that.
Okay. Guys, let me tell you something. WWE's coming to town, and that's part of TKO. And I bet you Dana White's going to get to one of those, and he's going to be blown away. Trust me, he should do a stadium show with both of these fights. Makhachev and Topuria and Jones and Aspinall in a stadium, break all the records for stadium shows or whatever for Vegas stuff. Blow the roof off, and I know that's a lot of talent on one card, but they recovered from 300. They can do it, but it's going to take him seeing that the same way when Tom Brady goes, hey, you want to see you too? And they did, and he went to the Sphere and he was blown away. It's going to take that event. It's going to happen. Mark it down. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in to Spinning Back Clique this week. We really appreciate it. Round of applause for the panel. My favorite panel so far. Don't tell the others I said that. And of course, we're here every Monday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific to unpack all the biggest stories of the week. I'll be on Overreaction Time tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific with Simon Simano if you want to check that out. But we're out of here for now. Go out and be a champion.